Okay, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're joining us from. Let's get started. We're just coming to the top of the hour, so let's make a start on this webinar. We're here to talk about where to start with cloud adoption. Introductions first. My name is Jonathan Tuliani. I'm the Managing Director in Europe for Opsgility. I am responsible for our European operations, and in addition, I work on the technical side with some of our content development and some of our training deliveries. I was nearly 10 years in Microsoft before taking this role, where I was part of the Azure product group for most of that time, working on various features in the networking space. I'm also one of the authors of the official exam reference for the AZ-103 Microsoft Azure Administrator exam. You can see the green book cover there, and I'm a Microsoft certified trainer. For a little background about Opsgility, we are a training provider. We specialize in Microsoft Cloud, not just Azure, but the full Microsoft 365, Office 365 cloud as well. We provide instructor-led training on-site or virtual. Of course, there's a lot of virtual training in the current time. And we provide both the Microsoft official curriculum and custom and advanced classes. So we work with people looking for certification and people who have already been certified looking to advance their skills to another level. Those classes take various formats. That includes just standard presentation-based classes, interactive workshops, hackathons, and we pride ourselves on the quality of our training materials and of our instructors. We also provide online training through our website, skillmeup.com. And here you'll find in-depth videos by many expert instructors. And in addition, you'll have a full hands-on labs with a full lab environment where you can have hundreds of different hands-on labs where you can learn online. It's very useful for certifications where a significant part of the certification exam is often a hands-on element. We also provide a series of live instructor classes and expert talks there on Skill Me Up. So with an online subscription and at an online price point, you still get the benefit of a live instructor and the ability to ask questions. And this covers certification, learning paths, and much more. We have a lot of deep dive content there that takes you beyond certification, as well as covering all the core certifications. And we have plans there that are designed for individuals, teams, or enterprises. For details there, you can see contact sales@opsgility.com or the free trial at the skillmeup.com website. I'll put this slide up again at the end. Okay, so where to start with cloud adoption? Let's start by looking at some of the challenges associated with cloud adoption, and then we'll run through some proven best practices of where you can start in order to set up your organization and your projects to be successful in the cloud. Now, what is the cloud? Let's start with the definition here. And this one comes from the National Institute of Standards and Technology in the US, NIST as they're called. I won't read a slide for you, but you can see it's focused on a model for enabling compute, with a compute and network and storage provisioned in the cloud, turned on and off very quickly. This is the definition they're giving. And this is a kind of standard definition that you'll see. And this is the way many people think about the cloud. And that is that they think about the technology. They think of the compute, they think of the servers, they think of the applications. And those things are all critical. But the important thing, and if you take away one thing from this webinar, the important thing to understand is when it comes to the challenges of an organization adopting the cloud, the main challenges are not the technology. If you look at why cloud projects fail, the reasons they tend to fail they tend not to be the technology reasons. It's not because something went wrong on the technology. Cloud projects fail. Cloud adoption gets difficult because of organizational challenges. Is the project aligned with a business strategy? Was the value being measured? Do we have the right metrics in the process to measure the value and recognize the value that is delivered? Were expectations realistic regarding costs, for example? What about the organizational dynamics? Are people actually on board with this thing? Do you have the alignment? Are the politics working for you or against you? What about the timeline, the budget estimate? Are they realistic? Are you reinventing the wheel? Are you actually reinventing things that you could pick off the shelf, starting from scratch? Are you using existing standards and processes in an inappropriate way in the public cloud standards that were developed in the on-premise IT space? And again, do you have the skills and the key talent that you need in order to deliver the project successfully and avoid making many mistakes? So it's these kind of challenges that are key to success in the cloud. And I'm not talking about success just for a one-off project. I'm talking about organizational success. I'm talking about cloud adoption at an organizational scale that is what you need in order to go beyond those individual onesie twosie projects to really transforming an organization to using the cloud in a serious way at scale. So this is my number one mistake, if you like. My number one piece of advice for the cloud is do not treat cloud adoption as simply a drop-in technology swap, that you're taking an existing data center, an existing, I don't know, VMware deployment, and you're saying, okay, we're going to switch that out at the renewal cycle and we're going to go with the cloud instead. If you approach the cloud with that mindset, if that is your fundamental model for how cloud adoption works, if you think of it as an IT project effectively, then you are going to bump into all of those organizational challenges that we just mentioned. And that's going to create a lot of friction from your project. And fundamentally, you're not set up for success. You might achieve 1 or 2 successful projects, but you're not set up for success as an organization for widespread adoption of the cloud. So that's a key thing. Don't treat the cloud simply as a drop-in technology swap, because the scope of a cloud adoption is much larger than that. And when I say larger, I don't just mean the effort, because of course it does take more effort. I mean the opportunity. The opportunity of the cloud is much more than just, hey, we'll do our IT a little bit more efficiently. The opportunity is digital transformation, and this requires a bigger type of thinking. Okay. So this is where what I say is, when I talk to customers about this, I say the cloud changes everything. Yeah, and I really mean that, everything. Once you really start to embrace the cloud and you understand the opportunity it creates, you realize that there's any single part of your business that you look at has the potential to be impacted by this idea of moving to the cloud. Because your IT in your business is, I mean, your IT is there to serve the business, and the cloud is such a transformation of the way you do IT that it enables your IT to serve the business in completely new ways. And that means it impacts the business. So unless you're thinking about this from an all-up business point of view, you're not going to be able to take advantage. Don't think of it as a drop-in technology replacement. So, I mean, with a slight IT focus, when you think about how things are done differently in the cloud, just the way IT is provisioned, the way it's managed and capacity is planned, completely different in the cloud, because you have this elastic capability to turn things on and off on demand. Application architectures in the cloud can be completely different. You have many cloud-based native services that are not available on premise. You design your applications in different ways for scale. The way you think about your network is different in the cloud. The way you deploy into the cloud, the way you monitor applications in the cloud for health. The way you think about availability and disaster recovery, there's many opportunities to do these things different in the cloud, and you need to do them differently in the cloud. Don't just take your existing IT and try to port, or at least not as a long-term solution. Performance, scalability, security, compliance, these things are very different in the cloud. Many cases, you have a different relationship with the technology provider, where maybe some additional responsibilities are taken by the cloud provider, for example, around the security and compliance aspects, but then there are new responsibilities that you also take on for yourself. And of course, the way that you pay for the cloud is different. You pay as you go based on your consumption. So the way that you budget and the way that you manage your costs is completely different and effectively completely new when you move to the cloud. So those are the changes that really impact IT directly. But in addition, you have this huge impact that goes beyond the IT department. As I say, you have an organization-wide impact. So, for example, the fact that with the cloud, developers are able to take a much more rapid and agile approach to their application development. You can just deliver value more quickly. This means that any existing project management processes that you may have designed in the past, many organizations have a typical life cycle process, based around a waterfall that's governed by, very high quality documentation and process guidance from their project management office. Those processes are not designed around cloud agility. And if you really want to take advantage of the cloud, those processes will need to change, move towards a more agile approach. You have new technologies in the cloud, new approaches to security and compliance. You have technologies with big data, machine learning, and various other things that create new opportunities. So existing standards need to evolve and adapt to reflect those technologies and the different approaches that they require. You need to think about DevOps and agility in terms of how you do your project mindset, we talked about, and you are billed in the cloud, as we said, based on your monthly consumption. So you're going to need new finance and governance processes. This affects your finance teams. Cloud technologies, as we said, things like machine learning and big data, they create new business opportunities. So this means the business and IT must work together much more closely. The business needs to understand the new opportunities, and that can be a mindset shift in itself. The business needs to understand the technology better, but also the technology people also need to understand the business better so that they can also surface opportunities. So this is really a new skill set within those teams and a different way of working within those teams. And of course, as a training provider, we're very focused on skills, and those new cloud-based skills are going to be needed not just by the developers and the IT pros, but across the organization, because the impact is so broad. The appropriate understanding of the cloud is going to be needed across the organization. Your managers, your leadership are going to need to understand these opportunities. The business needs to understand these opportunities. The HR team is going to be impacted by changes to career models, new training requirements. The finance teams are impacted. As we said, everybody needs the appropriate level of cloud understanding. So my golden rule, my golden top tip for successful cloud adoption is all about change. It's change at the organization level, it's changes to existing processes, and change to organizational culture. And change is hard. Organizations find change difficult. People are often resistant to change. Change is something that has to be actively managed. And that's where, in this talk, we'll talk about some of the approaches you can have to enact the changes effectively, and the things you need to do as an organization in order to create a solid foundation. So the first step is we need to think about a cloud vision and a cloud strategy. This is the pillar behind which all of our other cloud planning and our cloud execution will sit. So this is the foundation that really helps create the alignment we need and helps the leadership of the organization really understand the scope of what a true cloud adoption involves. Okay, so the first place to start is with your motivations. Why are you doing this? Why are you interested in the cloud? What is your rationale? What is the benefit that your organization is looking forward to? So I bucket these benefits into 4 areas, and I might even start to include a 5th area here, a people area, which we may talk about in a moment. So firstly, on the cost side, costs are done differently in the cloud, but it's not just that you're moving from a typical IT model where you have upfront costs, capital expenditure, and you're moving towards a monthly bill with operational expenditure, OPEX. But the way that you're billing it has a much bigger impact than that on your organization. So for example, with traditional IT, you have certain fixed costs for your data center, for example, and the staffing for your data center, power, heating, lighting. And these need to be apportioned across to the business whose applications are running in that data center. And that's typically done on a peanut butter basis. So you have a certain number of servers that you're running. Maybe you're running 2,000 servers in your data center, and you're just going to peanut butter those costs across the applications that are using those servers. But the challenge there is that it's a pretty naive way of apportioning these costs, because if you have a business unit, for example, that decides to decommission one of its applications and that frees up maybe 20 of your servers, then okay, for this fiscal year, that business is not going to get hit by those particular costs. But a lot of your fixed costs are still going to be there. You still have the building, you still have the staff. So next year, you're just going to peanut butter your costs against the remaining servers instead. It's really an artificial metric. The business hasn't really saved that money, not in a real sense. And when you look at the all-up business, you still have the building after all. So with the cloud, because you not only have a monthly bill, your monthly bill is broken down in fine detail against each resource that you've consumed. Each virtual machine, each piece of storage, whatever it is, each application has its own bill. So when a business unit turns around and says, we don't need that application, or can we make it smaller, or do we need to make it bigger, they get the benefit of those costs, or they have to find the budget for those costs directly. If you turn off 10 VMs, well, you've just saved that money directly off your bottom line. So you can create a much stronger relationship between the business and the IT costs, and you can make those costs very transparent to the business, and you can get immediate benefits when the business is able to make change. And this is an example of what I mean by the business and IT working much more closely together. You have this huge cost opportunity to integrate costs into the way the business thinks. Second one there, agility. Everyone knows with the cloud, of course, that you can turn things on and off very quickly. I can create a machine in a few minutes or seconds even, whereas traditional IT, it can take me days or months or longer to provision new hardware. It can be a very long process. So that instant provisioning is fantastic. But what's important to recognize is that instant provisioning enables you to work differently. Traditional IT cycles built around waterfall models, they work very well with those kind of long provisioning cycles because you need to plan up front in order to provision that hardware in time for when you're going to need it 3 months, 6 months later. But with the being released from those provisioning constraints means that IT can work in much faster ways with DevOps cycles, CI/CD cycles. To give an example, working with Microsoft on one of our training labs, I discovered a bug in one of the Microsoft services, and in Azure, and we have a relationship with that team, so I contacted them about this bug, and they were able to fix it and deploy a fix into production the next day. And this is because they've been through this process of evolving from a waterfall development cycle into an agile cycle where they're shipping code on a very frequent basis. So they're able to turn that bug around the next day. And you can do the same. You can go with your own customers or with your internal tools when an issue arises. If you have this investment in the agility, you can deploy those fixes much more quickly. You can be much more responsive to customer needs. You can pivot on a dime when requirements change. So you have a huge business opportunity that is lit up by the ability to work more efficiently. As well as time to market, the efficiency also means that your development teams, they just get more done. It's as simple as that. Cloud development and with these agile processes, they can just drive up your productivity and you can ship more stuff faster. So the agility is a big piece there. Third piece there, service quality. This pillar is very important. Everyone cares about reliability. Everyone cares about security and compliance. Obviously, performance and scalability also very important, especially in some applications. In the past, people have looked at the cloud and they've been kind of leery of this from a security point of view, wondering, they have this control bias, so they prefer to keep their on-premise infrastructure where they have full control over it. But in the same way, I don't keep my money under the mattress. I know the bank can do a better job. People, I think, now recognize that cloud providers actually provide a very strong platform for creating highly secure, highly performant, highly reliable applications. It's a shared responsibility. It's up to you to set things up correctly, and for the cloud provider to do their piece as well. But the cloud certainly is an opportunity to do this. And when you look at the level of scale and performance and so on that you can achieve in the cloud with a global footprint and all the many security and compliance certifications that cloud providers have, it's actually extremely difficult to match that with an on-premises deployment. So the cloud is actually an opportunity to do better in this space. It's a case where you can meet new and more stringent requirements than you could do in a cost-effective way with your own IT. And then finally here, big new capabilities, big data, machine learning, data analytics, artificial intelligence. There's all kinds of scenarios that are being lit up. Have a search online for design to disrupt. There's some fantastic Microsoft white papers around this topic of how the cloud can light up new scenarios. And then I mentioned there may be some additional advantages, and there's certainly a people advantage here. Because the IT space is moving in this direction, if you want to be able to hire the top talent, if you want to pick up the best new grads, if you're not in the cloud, if you're traditional IT, you're going to find that increasingly difficult, because the cloud is where things are moving for everyone. And people in IT, they recognize that, look, if they're not moving forwards, then the industry is moving forwards. So that means they're moving backwards. So purely in terms of a retention and a morale and a hiring point of view, cloud is an important part of any business's long-term IT strategy. Okay, let's keep going. So it's very important to be able to communicate the cloud value. I won't go through the slide line by line, but we'll pick out a couple of advantages. You might look, for example, at security and compliance. We were just talking about that. Oh, we get all this security and compliance with the cloud. Well, why is that important? Because the IT and the business have to work closer together. That means IT has to learn to speak the business language. So you don't just say it's security and compliance. This enables new markets. It enables us to go into sectors that we previously weren't compliant for. It enables us to have a higher security and go after customers that have a higher security requirements. It enables new markets. All this DevOps we talked about, it's about faster time to market. It's about fixing things faster for our customers when issues arrive, improved issue resolution. So it's very important to be able to translate those technical changes into these digital transformation value, the business value that they deliver. So bear that in mind as you're moving to the cloud and as you're thinking about your cloud strategy and the value it delivers. Who contributes to your cloud strategy? And as we've said, the cloud changes everything and it spans the business. And therefore, you will need input across not just IT and development teams and operations teams, but also from people who specialize in security and compliance, from the different business teams, HR teams, because it will affect how training and so on is done, and definitely finance, because as we say, there's a huge impact to how finance is done. So do make sure that you have the right voices in the room when developing your cloud strategy. And a very important part of this is to make sure you build some experience early on. Pick some existing applications and migrate them and learn from running them in the cloud. Until you've been hands-on, you're working in a very theoretical mindset. So in order to build your skills, it's very important to get hands-on, see what works, and that will put you on a much more concrete and a much more sure footing as you're building your cloud strategy. You'll have a lot more idea of what this involves. So the deliverable at the end of this, your cloud strategy deliverable, will be a document, and it will outline things like your motivations. We spent some time on that as to why you're looking to move to the cloud. And those motivations can change over time. It may be your initial motivations for year one are different from your benefits you'll get in year three. Year one is all about maybe cost savings and agility. Year three is about machine learning and new business opportunities. It can change over time. But be clear on what those motivations are, because I believe in this idea, this idea of starting with the why. If you are clear on these, it lines up the organization on all the thousands of decisions that are going to follow further on this journey. But if you're not clear on these, you're just setting up conflict further on. Be clear on the results you're expecting and the benefits you're hoping to get from it. Work on your business justification, and this does mean dollar numbers. So work out, what is this going to cost? What are the benefits we're expecting to see? And there's various models that can help you with that. Work on buy-in from your different groups. Are the finance team on board with this? Have we recognized the impact it's going to have? Do they have some ideas how to plan for that? HR equivalently, any of these teams that are going to be impacted, make sure you have the alignment in the organization. And finally, the strategy should have executive sponsorship and a commitment from the executive on executing this strategy. What does commitment mean? Ultimately, commitment means someone will put their name to it and they'll put a budget to it. If you don't have a budget, you don't have a strategy. So bear that in mind as you are building your cloud strategy. Okay, the next stage after a strategy is to look at what we call a cloud adoption plan. And this is where you're starting to put a little bit more of a concrete plan around the vision that you've been defining in the strategy. So typically this might be a 3 to 5 year adoption roadmap for a large enterprise. Could be shorter, of course, for a smaller organization. And it should be aligned with the strategy. This is about how you're going to execute to deliver what the strategy described. And of course, these plans are living documents. They need to be updated over time. You're not going to be able to plan down to the month 5 years ahead. It's a direction that we're fitting in here. So it's an estimated timeline. And again, this thing also needs to come with commitment and resourcing for execution. What are the elements within here? And you can think of this in four pillars, if you like, excuse me. The first is the workload. Many organizations, they take a strategy to say, okay, new workloads are going to be cloud first. Existing workloads, that's going to take us some time. But if we're doing new things, let's adopt a cloud first strategy for new workloads. If there's a compelling case why they shouldn't be done in the cloud, sure, we'll listen to that. But the default should be cloud for new workloads. Then it's a case of assessing your existing estate and prioritizing the migration of that estate to the cloud. Which ones will be migrated? Which ones might be retired or refactored or heavily re-engineered or rewritten for the cloud? And that prioritization should be based on the complexity and the maturity of the organization and the risks and the criticality to the business and so on. Next, we have a process change. As we said, if you're going to be successful in the cloud, you're not going to do it with your legacy processes. So think about how your engineering processes, your operation processes will have to be updated. Security and compliance guidance may need to be evolved. Things like network security rules may need to be different in the cloud. in order for your organization to take best advantage. Governance and risk management. If you have a cloud subscription, if you have an Azure subscription, that is a financial risk, if you like. You know, a developer using it for dev test purposes is running up a bill that you're going to have to pay. So in the same way you wouldn't hand out credit cards across your organization without having some kind of processes in place that set limits on what people can spend and provide guidance on what is allowed spending and what is not, and provide some kind of audit check to check that things are going correctly and there isn't some wild spending that's gone unrecognized. You would put all those processes in place around your credit cards. Well, the same thing's needed here. Your cloud subscriptions are also a financial risk, and you need to work with your finance teams, work with your leadership, and put in place the appropriate processes that enable people to do their jobs and benefit from the cloud while still having the right governance in place, the right risk management in place that treats this as a business. You then, of course, have to work with your business teams, development teams, and operations to make sure you've got the right alignment there, that the processes in those cases are working in a cloud-friendly way. On the finance side, we've talked about the CapEx, OpEx transition. There's also this tracking and reporting piece. So you're going to need tools and dashboards and reports and so on to show how cloud spend is aggregated up your organizational hierarchy, for example, how budgets are managed, how people are tracking against their budgets. Typical IT budgets are often centralized, but with the cloud, often they want to move those to business units so that the business unit has more accountability for its cloud spending, and they're able to take advantage of that in order to drive down their cloud spend. And you know, you're also there encouraging the businesses by taking responsibility to have proactive cost optimization, so they can do they can own that and work with their IT teams to keep things efficient. And then you've got the people side. On the leadership side, you need the appropriate skills to recognize the cloud challenges and provide the leadership that your organization needs. Obviously, your technical team, they have a lot to learn on the technical details of the cloud. And a lot of this isn't just the technical skills of knowing how to do things in the cloud, but it's a mindset. How do we create a cloud mindset rather than a legacy IT mindset? And I have a slide on that later. And also creating a cost-conscious culture, creating an awareness of cost across the organization. The analogy here I use is security. In the pre-internet days, there are many developers knocking out application code without having to think too hard about security of that code, because the code wasn't really exposed to much in the way of vulnerabilities. But as the internet came along, people started to write code for the internet, and suddenly we had all these issues with vulnerabilities, SQL injection attacks against websites and cross-site scripting and so on. And developers and architects had to develop a new skill set in security, and that's taken for granted now. Developers now, no one would expect a web developer not to be thinking about security as part of their application design. Well, the cloud makes the same transition happen for cost. So up till recently, up till the cloud, developers haven't really had to think about what does this application cost to run. It hasn't really been a concern for them. You know, they're just writing the code, they're designing the code, they think about reliability and they're thinking about security, but they're not having to think about cost. But cost is a fundamental pillar of cloud design. Different designs can cost very different amounts. I've seen different designs for the same system differ in costs by 7-digit numbers. So you have to think about cost up front in your design, and it has to be baked into the culture. It has to be something just like security that technical designers and implementers are consciously aware of, that their decisions have a cost impact. So treat cost like security and bake it into your engineering process. Okay. The next one here, an approach to adopting the cloud. Adopting the cloud can be particularly challenging in large organizations because you have different groups going off and doing different things, and they're reinventing the wheel, and they're setting up different standards that are conflicting with each other. And there's a challenge there to harmonize this and avoid all this duplication or triplication or quadruplication of effort, and also just promote reuse and standardization. Because if you don't do this, if you don't have that standardization and reuse, you end up with what is basically a mess. You will have a small number of successful projects, but it will rapidly become unmanageable. And you will then be trying to retrofit a layer of structure and control on top of what is basically chaos and spaghetti. So it's important to think about how you can create some structure, create kind of a landing zone and some standards and best practices around how organizations, teams within your organization will use the cloud. And that can set your cloud up A, in a successful platform, B, for much more efficiency, and also in a much more kind of scalable and future-proof way, so that you can move to the cloud, not just in onesie, twosie applications, but at scale. So an approach that many organizations have taken is to create what they call a central cloud team, or a cloud center of excellence, or cloud competency center is another name. There's some data here taken from the Flexera, it's the 2020 State of the Cloud report. It used to be called the Right Scale State of the Cloud report. And you can see here, it's I think it's nearly 70% of organizations have adopted this approach using a cloud center of excellence, and another 17% planning, as you can see. So it's an extremely proven approach to cloud adoption, is to create this central cloud team. So what do? They enable the cloud environment by creating governance controls. We talked about billing governance already, but there's other types of governance in terms of naming conventions and just standards of how different implementations should be created. So they create standards so that you have you're avoiding reinventing the wheel, and you're working in a way that's compliant with your organization's requirements. Set up those billing controls that we need. They manage the strategy. They champion its usage. There's an organizational change here and a change management piece that they help drive. Tell those success stories and bring people with them on this cloud journey. Best practices, reusable IP is very important, so that you're avoiding reinventing the wheel again and again, and you can have these reusable scripts and artifacts that the Cloud Center of Excellence publishes for other teams to just go use, so they're not starting from scratch. Remember, that was one of the mistakes we talked about previously. Delivering training for internal teams, or enabling training by bringing in training providers. We do this for a number of our enterprise customers, working with their COE teams to provide training, into those organizations. So skills are absolutely key here. This is across the board, not just the technical teams, but across the board. So this is something that the COE can coordinate, and they can get more bang for your training budget by centralizing that budget in the COE. And then creating a coordinated learning strategy for the entire organization, and also acting as consultants, acting as a guide for the actual application teams or migration teams who are delivering the cloud projects. An important thing here is that the COE does not actually deliver the cloud projects. They don't migrate your applications, they don't build new applications, but they do offer guidance. They are the experts that your application teams, your migration teams come to, in order to review their designs and to get best practice advice from the COE. So the COE have that broad view on what's going on in the organization, and they can advise your other teams to say, there's another project over here that you don't know about, but they've done something similar. Here's what you can reuse. So this is how the COE makes your organization adopt the cloud in a much more effective way. So a strategy for setting up the COE. How do you create a COE from scratch? The first thing is it has to have leadership support. It has to be given the mandate, the charter, as being the Cloud Center of Excellence that other teams must consult. If they don't have that charter, then they're just making noise. And other teams will just carry on doing their own thing. So they need to have a strong charter that gives them the right level of authority. They need to bring people with them. And to do that, some quick wins are very useful. Build some reputation with the business and communicate those wins. Communication is key here. Reusability, bringing those reusable artifacts on board so that they can immediately be of value to the other teams. They're not just an additional hoop those other teams have to jump through, but they're immediately bringing value, enabling other teams to do things better and to do things faster and to do things more securely, safer, and so on. And they want to make sure they can scale. So they need to make sure that they're evangelizing. They want to make sure that the work they're doing isn't too deep with one individual team, but it's something that has an application across the organization. An approach to building the COE, first, of course, identifying the team. Choose the right leader, choosing the right people with some diverse backgrounds. It's nice to have people from across the organization who have good insight into the challenges that the organization faces. You'll need people on the infrastructure side, the data side, the development side, security. Typically, a COE in a large organization may start with half a dozen people and then move from there. This team is going to need strong cloud skills. Ideally, you have some people with some cloud experience already. You may choose to hire externally, or you may want to invest in training for this team, especially with emphasis on design skills and governance. Those are the key things that this team is going to need. Thirdly, building the environment. Some people call this a landing zone. It's like, that governance framework that of just how you're going to manage your subscriptions, the security, the access control, the networking. If there's a hub and spoke model, the COE may own the hub piece of the hub and spoke networking model where the reusable components sit. So building out that environment that other applications can hook into. So you're giving them that landing zone that they build on top of, and they haven't got, those other teams don't have to start from scratch. That's a key value that the COE provides. And then finally, the systems. How do I engage the COE? How do I ask for a design review? How do I browse the available scripts or templates that they've published for me to reuse? So you've got to build that internal SharePoint site or intranet site, build that knowledge base, build the tools that people can use to raise tickets against the COE and ask for help. Build the process by which the COE tracks its performance and reports up to its own management as well. So build those systems, the rhythm of business and the supporting tools for the COE. And then the last main section here I want to talk about, we've talked about building the strategy, we've talked about building a center of excellence, and the last one here obviously is skills. The cloud is a huge space, and it is a very technical space, and the skills are required across the organization for all the reasons we've said, because the impact of the cloud is so broad. So skills is a critical piece. You cannot be successful in the cloud if you don't have the right cloud skills. It's as simple as that. You can try to build skills simply through your own experience, but what you will find is, firstly, that it's slow because this stuff is tough, and secondly, that you will have to learn from a lot of mistakes, and those mistakes can be expensive. If you're migrating workloads to the cloud, it can be expensive not only in terms of the bill that you pay for your cloud consumption, but can be expensive in terms of downtime. It can, application outages because avoidable mistakes were made. So investing in skills takes risk out of your cloud adoption roadmap, as well as making your roadmap go faster, and as well as offering cost savings. So it makes a lot of sense to invest in the right skills here. Now, it is a cultural change, as we've said, so it's not simply about technical skills. So there is a leadership element here. A strong part of this is that the leadership must assume some level of risk and provide support and cover for their teams that are taking chances, or they may feel they're taking chances in moving in a new direction. It's very easy to carry on doing what you're doing, and change is hard. So people will need support in order to do this, and that's why leadership is a key piece here for cloud adoption. Without that, there'll always be resistance, and also lack of alignment issues, political issues that can really hold back cloud adoption. Development support teams, they must obviously step out of their comfort zone, learn new ways of doing things, learn new skills. So that's a key thing. There's a great deal to learn there. And then on the IT side, the operations side, you see here, this guy, he's sitting with a server room behind him. Is that server room going to be there 3 years from now? He's going to be worried about his job 3 years from now. So you need to think about the challenges people have, the fears that they have. And again, this is where it comes down to leadership. How do you address those? How do you make sure that people recognize that these are actual opportunities rather than threats to their future? And this is a chance for them to actually deliver more value for the business. And that's why it's very important to understand the impact to your staff. Responsibilities will change. People will have new responsibilities. There'll be new processes to learn, and there'll be huge opportunities for success, but also potentially for failure. If you're migrating that critical application and there's an outage, then that is something that of course will have an impact. So it's important that people see the opportunities and they recognize the skills needed in order to be successful with these opportunities. And the way to address a lot of the fears that people may have and the resistance people may have is through transparency. Be clear about the strategy. The strategy is not a secret document. Be clear about the strategy. Be clear on why. Be clear on where you're trying to go as an organization and why it's important for the organization to do this. So bring people with you on the journey. So you've got it's a hearts and minds battle. And be clear on the strategy that you have in order to be successful, and be clear on how that strategy supports the people who are actually going to be taking you on this journey, the investment in those people that's going to be needed, and how that you have people's backs here basically, and that you will be bringing them on this journey and enabling them to be successful with these challenges. As we've said, capabilities are key. There's huge opportunities for the cloud to deliver new value for the business. We talked about machine learning, big data, AI. there's huge opportunities there. And that requires those skills and the capability to understand those opportunities to spread beyond the IT into leadership, finance, HR, and so on. So make sure that your skills and your mindset here does embrace some of these new technologies and the opportunities. It's not just about migrating existing IT. Remember right back at the beginning, don't treat it as a drop-in technology swap. This is much bigger than that. So think about the opportunities. It's the understanding of these. People have got to learn many new piece of terminology here. What is machine learning? What can it do? What can it do for my business? Only when you understand these opportunities can you really take advantage. Again, switching back to the IT side, again, we talked about cultivating a cloud mindset. And when we talk about an on-premises mindset, a traditional IT mindset, people provision servers for their peak demand, typically with a lot of headroom for additional capacity. And many servers these days run on, single digit CPU load. It would be commonplace, low single digits even. They, when you need to make things bigger, you create bigger servers. You don't have more servers, you have bigger servers. They're always on. They're quite fixed in size. It's very hard to make changes. Things are configured manually. There's long provisioning cycles, and people hoard these servers. It's kind of an ownership thing. That's my server. I've seen before now with servers that could be run for years in a data center. A server could be sitting there for 3 years doing nothing, no workload deployed, but it's on, it's consuming power, it's being patched every month just in case someone needs it. But if someone turns it off, immediately someone is there. What do you do to my server? That's my server. I might need that. That's the on-premises mindset. You've got to move away from that. The cloud mindset, you're thinking about paying for what you use. Think about consumption. You can just scale up. If it turns out that you need more, you can just scale up. You can make things bigger. You can make things smaller. You can scale in and out. You can scale up and down. There's no lead time. You can just turn these things on when you need them. You can automate much more. So it's a different mindset. It's a very different way of thinking about IT. From an HR point of view, you're going to be looking at your existing roles that you fill. Don't look at it from the point of view of individuals. You need to think of it from a role point of view. And then you think about how do our existing roles map to the roles that we're going to need to be successful in the cloud? And in which cases are we going to be taking existing roles and the people in those roles and providing the training to reskill them into their new roles? Or to what extent do we need to hire talent in from outside where roles are completely new and maybe don't map to existing talent that we have? So look at how you can evolve your career model, your training programs, your career model, the different career levels that you have and the job roles, job titles. All of this may have to evolve to reflect this change, because it is a very deep and fundamental change that we're going into. So think about how that works in terms of the training that you provide, the career model that you provide, and so on. Think how you will evolve your skills. We work with organizations around the world developing learning plans, helping organizations navigate the maze of cloud training that's available and integrating into their adoption roadmap the skills that they will need to work with them to identify, okay, what are the teams that you have in your organization? What skills do these teams have today? What skills are they going to need for the roles they're going to have in the future? And then we can build a learning plan around that to say, well, which classes are we going to need? Maybe we're going to need a 203 delivery. It's one of the Azure developer classes. We're going to need an Azure developer class in the US, and we're going to need an architecture class in Europe. We're going to work with your organization to build this kind of roadmap where we can look at how to get the best value out of your IT budget and your training budget, so that you can give the right skills to the right roles within your organization. And that's not just the technical roles. Obviously, they're a huge part of it, but it also includes training on cloud leadership and on the business side, so that everyone in the organization is working from a cloud knowledge baseline that enables them to communicate and enables them to take advantage of the opportunity. So this is the kind of learning plan that we work with our customers on, both developing and then delivering. And then just to wrap up for today, this takes us back to what we do as an organization. We develop and deliver those learning plans under our Opsgility brand, which offers instructor-led training, virtual and on-site, including custom classes, advanced classes, and so on. And then a huge part of enabling an organization is often to complement that with the on-demand training, where People can drop in and out of specific classes based around a specific technology that they're working on at that point in time, or they're willing to, or they're using their free time or time in where they're not on hard deadlines to work through a learning path to build up the skills for a particular certification or going beyond certification in some areas. And we provide those through our skillmeup.com site. And we have plans there, as I say, for individuals looking to build their own schemes, their own skills. Teams then offers the ability for managers to set learning paths and learning goals for their teams and to track those at an organizational level. And then enterprise subscriptions offer additional reporting and additional integration options. So this is what we do. This is why we think that learning is obviously a critical part of enabling an organization for cloud success. And with that, I'm happy to open the floor and to take any questions that people may have. So feel free to put your questions into the chat. Any questions, anybody? Don't be shy. Okay, there's a question there for network admin or IT support. Where should I start with training? So on the networking side, if you're new to the cloud, if you're completely new, and I'm going to focus here on Microsoft Cloud. If you're completely new to the cloud, the best place to start would be with one of the fundamentals courses, things like AZ 900. And if you're looking at the wider Microsoft Cloud, they of course have the MS 900 course as well. So start with one of those fundamental courses, and that just creates a baseline of just common concepts and terminology that are common to the cloud. From there are various options, but in particular on the networking side, if you're looking for certification, the AZ 103 certification, or now AZ 104 certification, is the Azure certification that focuses on networking. And this covers not just networking, but also just infrastructure as a service. This is where we're talking about virtual machines, storage, networking, and then also identity. Where we're thinking about how you manage your users in Active Directory, Azure Active Directory, and so on. So this would be the main one of the role-based certifications for networking. So I think that would be a good place to go. On the IT support side, there are similar certifications on the Microsoft 365 side. So if you're dealing with managing cloud-based management of Microsoft 365 subscriptions and so on, that would be useful. And then there's a question there for non-IT. If you want to get into the cloud field, what would be the first course or certificate to start with? I think again the AZ 900. If you're looking for at a technical level, or the MS 900 certification, those would be a good foundation in cloud concepts. And from there, you should have a bit more of a idea which direction to go in next. Again, there's the infrastructure side. That's typically for people coming in from an existing IT pro background. Developers have a track. There's some people go in the specialization around data science and big data and databases and so on. So there's kind of a data specialization. And then some people take an architecture specialization where they're going across the board. Think of an enterprise architect role today. So a challenging role that goes across the technologies, but not quite as deep. So those are the different directions that you may want to look at: infrastructure, developer, and data or architect. But always start with the fundamentals. One of the reasons, just to focus there, why are certification classes important? So we have a lot of classes that are custom and advanced classes, and we do a great deal of work in that area. And on Skill Me Up, you'll see there's learning paths around certification, but there's a lot of additional learning that goes beyond certification as well. So it depends a little on your role. Where there is a certification that lines up very well with your role, then obviously the certification is a natural thing to strive for. And the advantage of the certification is it does give you a goal to work for. It kind of stops you slacking off. If you've attended an instructor-led class, then the certification forces you not just to go back to work and carry on as before, but to continue learning, to do the labs and the revision that you need to go from that class and then go and pass the certification exam. So it enables you to continue your learning journey, acts as a forcing function. So the certifications are useful from that point of view. But in some cases, for some roles, such as leadership roles, we often find that something a little more specialized is needed. and we do specialized classes there. You'll find specialized classes, for leadership for Azure Microsoft partners working in Azure Sales, for example. We have specialized classes on Azure Sales, which don't map to any certification, but are very relevant for partners working in the sales space. So we have a wide range of classes, both instructor-led and through Skill Me Up, that go for certification and beyond. Regarding the slides that we're presenting, we're not handing out the slides, but we are planning to publish a recording of this webinar on our YouTube channel. So if you want to look back over the content, then do just subscribe to our channel on YouTube, and you'll be able to get the slides through that. You can also subscribe to us or Opportunity on LinkedIn, so you can pick things up through there. I hope that answered the questions. Let me know if there's any answer that wasn't clear or not satisfactory, or if there are any more questions. Okay, super. Well, if that's everybody, thank you all for attending. Thank you for your time. I look forward to seeing you all in future talks, either more of these webinars or through the live instructor training we do on Skill Me Up. And best of luck with the current COVID crisis. Everybody stay safe and enjoy happy learning. Thank you, everybody.